Hi, Chloe. So glad you're here with us.
Hi, Laurie. Thanks for having me.
And it's late at night for you, so we appreciate you staying up late to be on the call with us. You're in the Philippines.
You're welcome. I'm really pleased to be part of this. Thanks for having me.
Well, we've been talking about you. I'm not sure if you felt this, but I'm part of the Blue the Dive team in North America, and we've been talking about you guys because you've been doing some amazing things. And I don't think Greenfins is really on the radar of people in the Caribbean and North America and even South America. I don't know if you're on the radar. So please enlighten us. Tell us what you are all about.
Okay, well, Greenfins is basically a management approach to sustainable diving or environmentally friendly diving practices. So a lot of people get confused because Greenfins isn't actually an organization. It's a management approach. And I work for a UK charity called the Reef World Foundation. And through my work with Reef World, I train people to implement Greenfins across Southeast Asia. So we focus in the Coral Triangle, which is the center of marine biodiversity and also home to some of the best dive sites on the planet, arguably. So we feel that this area is really in need of the protection, and we recognize that the diving industry is a really fantastic tool to be able to inspire positive actions for change right where it's needed at the grassroots level. So Greenfins was initiated in 2004 by the United Nations Environment Programme. And the way that they work is they work through national governments in the countries, in their own countries. So the program was first of all initiated in Thailand, which was actually 2004 was the year of the Asian tsunami. So activities were very slow to begin with when funds were redirected, obviously, to more pressing needs. And then the program really got started in probably 2006. And I became involved in the program in 2008 as a volunteer for Greenfins in Thailand underneath the leadership of Kunipon Pongsawan, who is a government official and also scientific researcher as well. And when I joined the program, it was a fantastic approach to educating divers. And the diving industry in Thailand were really jumping on board, showing a lot of enthusiasm to being part of a sustainable diving movement. But there was nothing really robust about the system at that point. And so myself and my partner, JJ, and the founder of the Reef World Foundation, Anne Miller, who has a science management background, put together what is now the assessment system that we use to be able to actually monitor how well the dive centres are complying to our code of conduct, the Greenfins Code of Conduct. So we can actually measure how well the dive centres are following the code of conduct and actually look and see what their direct impact to marine biodiversity is. And then also offer them advice and guidance on how to mitigate that threat and manage their diving practices more sustainably. So that's not just us that's done that. We did that with partnership with the Thailand government, King Nippon and the Greenfins guys there, and also the diving industry, mainly the diving industry. I'm a diver since I was 12. I've worked as a diving instructor in the UK. And so I really recognize the diving industry as a fantastic audience to be able to engage with these messages and also being able to green their practices as well as stepping outside the dive centre for other activities as well. So we did it in partnership with the diving industry and the national governments in Thailand. And when the program really got going in Thailand, we recognized ourselves at Reef World as now becoming quite a valuable tool to be able to share those lessons, not only the lessons of how to implement Greenfins from the national level and the local level, but also in the dive centre level. So actually recognizing how dive centres are coming up with these really innovative ideas of overcoming environmental challenges on a daily basis and taking those lessons and sharing them in other places. So we partnered up with the United Nations Environment Programme again and went over to Malaysia and Indonesia to see how receptive the diving industry were over there. And also if there's a need for Greenfins as well, which there was a massive need and the diving industry were incredibly enthusiastic. But funding is always difficult when you're working in the NGO sector. And we found it quite difficult to raise funds, but we got some small grants that enabled us to come across to here in the Philippines, which is where we set up a small base. And this is where we really hashed out Greenfins as a true approach with the national government here in the Philippines, where there's some very minimal resources being put towards environmental protection and very low capacity at the national and local level to manage those issues. But the diving industry is as strong as ever. So we have thousands of tourists coming here every year. We've got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of local dive guides working here. And then obviously the foreign business owners and local business owners as well, all of which can really inspire massive change on a local level. So with these guys as our allies, we then work to try and really make the system a lot more robust while working with the national government. Since then, we then got some more success with the funding, and we've taken the program across to Vietnam and the Maldives, where we're seeing loads of success as well, with the national governments jumping on board. And once again, the dive centres learning from what we've learned from the other countries and teaching us everywhere that we go. We're being taught as well. So that is the story in a nutshell of where we are now.
Wow, that's fantastic. This is so great to hear this, so people understand that how important dive centers are in being part of the solution.
Exactly.
And bringing in the volunteers that can do the work that needs to be done, and to educate the customers while they're there. It's a win-win. It's a win-win for everybody. I wanted to ask you, in North America, we talk about how we need to make the pie bigger and bring in more people into diving. Is that a problem in Southeast Asia?
Well, obviously, with every private sector, part of every private sector, the growth, that you're always wanting a growth. And I think that the mass diving industry in Southeast Asia has got pockets, but it's also got room for growth. So we actually identify hotspots for diving and also ecological significance, which is where we direct our efforts with Greenfins when we first work in an area. So often Greenfins is active in those mass diving destinations, but we're also focusing on the emerging markets as well. So, for example, here in the Philippines, there's a lot of locations that are quite unknown to international tourists, but are quite well known to domestic tourists. And also the emerging market here in Southeast Asia with the Koreans, Chinese, Japanese. And so working with different audiences to make environmentally friendly diving cool and trendy and something that's actually very accessible to all of the different markets. So I don't think that diving, reaching out to lots of people is an issue here, especially when it comes in Southeast Asia anyway, in the Coral Triangle as a whole. Coming to looking at foreign tourists coming in, and the industry is definitely booming on a local and national levels in all of the countries that we're working in.
So all the more need for you and Greenfins to be there to help protect biodiversity by coming together and collaborating and creating teamwork with local businesses, so that they can help to mitigate the damage and also to protect those areas that are of environmental significance. So how do you do that?
Well, you just pointed out a very key point, actually, collaboration. So this is really what we drive for. We don't have any sort of competition when it comes to the work that we're doing, and we come in with our arms open. So we partner up. Once we start working with the national governments first, because this is where we really see the sustainability of the program. If the national governments can see a way forward to managing a more sustainable diving industry, then we can start bringing in other partners, local NGOs or national NGOs. For example, Reef Malaysia are actually our lead partner in Malaysia. They're actually the ones overseeing these Greenfins assessments and the trainings on a local level. So this is where our job comes in. We actually come in and actually train different Greenfins assessors, and they could be national government or officials, local government officials, NGO partners. They could be even freelance diving instructors who are keen to help out. So we actually bring together this huge multi-stakeholder group, train them up to be able to manage the assessments and the training on local levels. And then it's sustainable in the long run. We keep on lobbying at the national level to keep Greenfins on the agenda. But then the idea is that we really create a sustainable program on a local level that can keep on running for years and years. The assessments of the dive centres are done annually. So this is where the need for the ongoing input is needed on a local and national level.
So let's run through what an assessment would look like And why would a dive operator want to open themselves up to change?
I know it's nerve-wracking, I know, but and we get a fantastic response from the diving industry. We often hear when we come into dive centres, and it's often on the ground. We go in and we actually talk to people face to face. That's what we really believe inspires that change, face to face communication. And we often invite the dive centres to join what we call a launch or a big meeting. And the dive centres always are a little bit nervous about what it might mean, but then they're blown away because everybody ends up coming to these launch meetings, even though lots of people in the past have tried to bring together all of the dive centres. It often doesn't work because it might be for different motives, but when the motive is purely environmental, the diving industry come running. They're always very keen to help, to be involved. And so then we offer them a chance to be members of Greenfins, and that's free of charge. All they have to do is sign a membership form that says that they do their best to follow the Greenfins Code of Conduct. Once we've got that membership form, a Greenfins assessor that's been trained by the Reef World Foundation will come in and conduct an environmental assessment of their dive practices. So that involves the assessor going out on a normal diving tour, joining their guests and their dive guides, and just observing, just watching. They don't get involved at this stage. They don't start preaching about environmental practices. They just observe. And the assessors will be monitoring the different practices and looking to see what processes they have in place, what environmental threats is being posed, and what controls are in place to mitigate that threat. And depending on how successful those controls are, they generate a score. And that score is directly related to a threat to local biodiversity. So that score is, with Greenfin, 0 is best, 0 impact. So we actually then feed that back to the dive centre management and let them know how they've done in their assessment and give them 3 clear areas to improve on before their next annual assessment. So that might be, for example, we spoke to your boat captain and we spoke to him about when he does engine maintenance, what does he do with the used oil that he takes out the engine? And he might say, worst case scenario, we bury it on the beach, which actually is quite a common way of dealing with it here. And so then we'll let them know, actually, there's a local gas station just down the road that will accept used oil and they recycle it. So if you can have a collection point within your resort or dive centre and then have it taken once it's full to the gas station. Or it might be, before you go diving, ensure that the guests receive a thorough environmental briefing and are told what they're going to see on the dive. And just to inform people that maybe they might correct customer bad behaviour as and when it happens, just to teach people underwater when they might be, for example, kicking the reef, that you might just have your fins lifted up a little bit. Or another example might be looking at garbage management. So we might speak to the people that are running the reception of the dive centre and say to them, where does this garbage go after hours when it closes up? And they might say, oh, we're not sure. We don't have any systems for potentially maybe looking at putting recyclables in different areas. So then we'll organise or help the dive centre to put together a system to be able to organise recyclables versus non-recyclables, and then let them know about local ways that they could go about recycling those things if it's available. So it's about looking at realistic changes that can be done in the next year before their next annual assessment. And then we'll ask them if they think that that's realistic. If they agree to them, then they're their 3 points for improvement. And then after that's done, we then have a session with all of the dive staff. And that includes the receptionists, that includes the boat crew, the captains, the dive staff, and the management, where we actually go through what Greenfins is. We go through the Greenfins Code of Conduct, which is a list of 15 actions and activities that a dive centre can do to mitigate their environmental threat. And then we'll also give them tips and tricks on how they can go about making change on an everyday basis within their businesses. And so we'll talk to the dive guides about how they can manage their guests better. There's everyday challenges, especially when you're working in Asia with the issue of losing face. You don't want to tell someone that they're doing something wrong. So it's about training these dive guides who know the reefs better than anyone else, and they adore those reefs as well. And it breaks their heart when they see people acting irresponsibly. So it's about teaching them that it doesn't need to be a confrontational or negative thing. Actually, it can add value to the customer's experience. You can teach them a little bit about your reefs and how, when they come on holiday, they can help to preserve them for maybe their children coming out diving in the future years. So these sessions are really where the magic of Greenfins happens. This is where we really hear from the local community, who are often, the employees of the dive centres are often local community representatives, about what their fears and concerns are, and then we can address those in those sessions. And then beyond that, the dive centre will get some environmental materials that can help them to promote their membership. They're allowed to use the Greenfins logo however they want, obviously not for anything that might be deemed environmentally irresponsible, but and some Greenfins materials that they can put up around the dive centre and to use as tools. So I don't know if you can actually see this, but this is the Greenfins icons. Is there a bit of glare on that?
Yes, and I want to get a copy of that. But I think you have a logo, right? Don't you have some kind of a thing that you have on your website? Do you have that? I know you used to.
We have these individual icons are split down, so we often just promote one by one the ecological significance. So what we really teach dive guides to do with each of these is not to cover all of them. You don't need to bore people in environmental briefing. You need to inspire them, get them excited about the dive, and actually let people know about the ecological reason behind why we ask people not to step on coral. Let them know that it's alive and that if you break it, that will do away hundreds of years potentially of growth. And so it's just about giving a little bit more information instead of the sort of, oh, and don't touch anything, please, when you're diving. A little bit more information to really inspire that change.
So inspiration is all about giving them an ecological reason. So basically connecting them to the ecosystem, showing them how whatever it is, how it all connects, and probably saying some cool things about what it's all about. Isn't this cool? And that by doing this, you're a part of the solution. You're helping to protect by following these guidelines,
exactly.
Whatever. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I'd like to know, with your code of conduct, what happens if somebody is caught short and not following the code of conduct? What do you do with that operator?
Well, so as the system has evolved over the years, we've balanced this sort of quality control versus not excluding anyone from the program. So Greenfins is about biodiversity and protection of marine biodiversity, first and foremost. Second of all, it's becoming an accreditation program for dive centres. So we don't want to exclude anyone from the program. So no one can pass or fail their first assessment. Everyone can be part of it. And all we ask is that the dive centre will show an improvement, which is shown through these assessment scores from year on year. And if by their third assessment we've seen no improvement or no real desire to improve at all, then that's when we'll call their membership into suspension. Or if we see an activity or hear about an activity that is an extreme breach of the code of conduct, then we might call their membership into question at that point as well. So it's actually really rare that we have to suspend members. Usually if we do have to suspend them, we give them a 2 weeks retrieval in a way. So we come back in 2 weeks and then hopefully they've made some changes. Some things are really easy to do and people just forget, like they might have some shells that are on display in their dive centre, which is against the code of conduct, because from our point of view, tourists will just then be encouraged to support the local marine curio trade, which obviously is quite a devastating trade worldwide. So we ask all dive centres to act as responsible role models and not have any of those sorts of things around. But people might forget, the diving industry is a busy industry and people are busy from morning until night. So maybe they've forgotten to remove that giant clam off their reception desk. So we'll give them a chance. We'll come back in 2 weeks, and if they have, then they can maintain their membership.
Okay. So you must have a lot of people who are really benefiting from this. What kind of benefits would an operator get from being involved in this? What are some of the wins that you've heard about? Any stories about them going, wow, we know we got involved in Greenfins and this happened? Anything like that?
Well, we've had a lot of feedback from the dive centres, a lot of fantastic feedback that on a local operational level, the dive centres are actually finding that their businesses are running better, because Greenfins is about implementing effective policies And yes, it's environmental policies, but you can actually build capacity at the dive centre level to implement any policies. So you can actually help them to run their dive centres better. They often say to us, it's really nice to have third parties come in and see how the business is running. Sometimes maybe the management don't go out on regular dive trips, so they don't really know what's happening on the dive boat. So having a third party coming in that's not going to upset their business in any way, just offering them guidance and advice for how to improve practices is often really valued within the dive centre. But then we also see a lot of dive centres partnering up, because when we work on a local level, we collaborate with lots of different NGOs locally, but also different government authorities. And you can actually see the dive centres getting better connected with local government authorities and stepping outside of their dive centres and having a real change locally when it comes to infrastructure that's needed to overcome maybe what might be deemed as more widespread issues like garbage management or sewerage management, etc. So you're actually connecting the diving industry up with people locally, and then they can have a real change locally as well. But we're also seeing tourists beginning to choose dive centres because they're Greenfins members as well. So we're actually seeing the dive centres. We haven't actually quantified it yet. This is where, you know, we're all my team at Reef World. We're a small team. We're 4 people. We're scientists with a big environmental heart and even bigger diving heart. And so we're neck deep in the work that's going on out here when it's actually getting the project going and getting properly implemented in the areas that we're working. And this is why we're so pleased to be working with people like Martina with the Green Bubbles program, because this is where we can reach out to people that have a lot more capacity within their projects to be able to quantify that sort of economic gain at the dive centre level as well. So we haven't quantified it, but we're hearing that people are choosing dive centres because they're Greenfins members.
I think we need to have Greenfins just be everywhere.
Well, our approach has been one of sustainability. So we've really been spreading slowly, which is why you were saying, I don't think a lot of people have heard of Greenfins, apart from in the areas that we're working in. But it's slowly becoming better known, and we're hoping to work also with some of the big dive training organisations as well to help get the name out there a bit more. So we are hoping to be able to reach out more, but for us it's about sustainability in the areas that we're working in. We don't want to spread ourselves too thin too quickly, but we are looking to expand and to move further afield. And we're having a huge amount of interest from places like South Africa, also Sri Lanka, other places in the Indian Ocean, and across to the Caribbean as well. So we know that people are really interested in Greenfins. We have a very robust system now that we know is adaptable. We've proven that it's adaptable and it's replicable into lots of different diving destinations. Think about the Maldives diving industry. It's very different to the industry here in the Philippines. I mean, everyone's going diving, but what you get around that, the product of the diving industry is very different. And Greenfins is having just as much of an impact in the Maldives as it is over here in the Philippines.
You do work in both types of areas that are highly developed, and then areas that are emerging areas that actually need to be protected. Is it easier to get the industry people, the dive centers, the resort operators, the liveaboards involved if it's at a place where there's a lot more competition and a lot more going on, or is it easier to get the operators who are in new areas that have not really opened up yet? Which is more, who are more likely to plug into this?
I guess probably in the areas where you have, like here in Puerto Galera in Sabang, and just off the doorstep of where we are here. We've been based here for 4.5 years now in the thick of the diving industry. We can't seem to get away from it. But with obviously lots of travel around Southeast Asia. Here in Puerto Galera, we have 44 dive centres on 3 small beaches, all fighting for the same, tourist dollars, etc. that might be out there. So when we first launched Greenfins here, we got about 75% of dive centres signing up. And that's normal, actually. That's what we usually see. And then that creeps up year after year when those dive centres that perhaps weren't interested in the first year start seeing, what's this Greenfins logo? Why is the local government working with those guys and not us? I want to look at this thing. Their businesses haven't shut down with their Greenfins members. Maybe we want to start looking into this. So 75% is usually the rate that we get wherever we seem to go. But I must say, probably in the emerging diving destinations, it might not be such a great example, but Malapascua here in the Philippines was hit by a devastating typhoon not long ago. And obviously the dive businesses there were very badly affected, but the industry's boomed, jumped back, bounced back. But when we went there last year, we actually got 100% of the dive centres signing up. And I think that might be a reflection of the lack of competition on a local level. But also I think it might be a reflection of the fact that the diving industry had to work together throughout the typhoon as it was. So they're maybe more used to working as a united force towards environmental protection, which is what Greenfins is. It unites all of the different voices towards environmental protection.
That makes total sense. There's nothing like a crisis to bring you all together. And now they're really starting to see the importance of collaboration, and every day, just not when there's a typhoon that comes through. I'm curious to find out, how do you get the local governments involved? What is that your job? Do you go in to talk to the local governments and start explaining what's going on? How do you do that?
Well, we do it face to face, but as I mentioned before, Greenfins is adopted at the national level. So Greenfins is actually adopted by the national governments or the national authorities that are overseeing environmental work, like in Thailand, the Department of Coastal and Marine Resources, all of the relevant authorities in each of the countries. So once you get the national government on board, you can start strengthening, revising and maybe strengthening some of those national frameworks they've got in place to govern the diving industry, and maybe letting them know how they might manage a more sustainable diving industry better in the long run by using the Greenfins approach. So they adopt the Greenfins approach. There's no charge for them. They obviously cover some of the costs when it comes to Reef World, doing the training to be able to build the capacity on a national level so that they can then roll it out. But then it's from the national level that it trickles down to the local level. But often in a lot of the countries that we're working in, Indonesia, the Philippines, for example, the government is very decentralized. So then it needs working on the local level as well. So that's where we'll actually go knocking on the local government units' doors and letting them know about Greenfins and the benefits to them. So, for example, there's a fisheries officer that we work with here in the Philippines. And when we first came here, when we first met her about 4 years ago, she had never worked with the diving industry and she'd never been diving. And she's a fisheries officer. She's the first point of contact when it comes to marine conservation locally. So now I went to see her just the other day, actually, and she's a fully fledged diver. She was sponsored by a local Greenfins dive centre to become a diver. And then through the citizen science programs that we promote through Greenfins as well, she's also become Reef Check qualified, which she's extremely proud about and she's using a lot. And she actually thanked me and said, before you came, I'd never ever worked with a dive centre. In fact, the thought of it scared me a bit. But since Greenfins has been active here, I've got hundreds of volunteers at my beck and call whenever I need them. It's become a bit of a headache for me.
It's a good place to be, though.
That's what I said to her. I said, you were telling me you didn't have enough volunteers before, and now you've got too many.
Well, this is fascinating. I really love to learn more about your whole approach. I know we don't have time now, but I really love the fact that you go in at the government level. You plug in there, and then it falls down, and it doesn't cost them anything. You only show them the benefits of how they could really get a handle on this, and the benefits could start to trickle up as opposed to trickle down.
Absolutely, and also it's about building the capacity at the national level as well. So when we first started working, I keep on using the Philippines as the example. It's just because I'm here at the moment. If we were in a different country, I'm sure I'd be using those examples. But the government department that we work with here, it was a very new department when we started working with them, and none of the guys there were divers. And we said to them, look, if you want to run Greenfins nationally, we need divers. We don't just need divers, we need experienced divers, because we need you guys to go into dive centres and talk to dive guides who have been diving for 20 years and be able to, talk to them on a basic level about how they can go about their jobs in a more sustainable manner. So we need good divers within the national government. So they started training them to dive now. And they're not yet at the level that we can train them as Greenfins assessors, but give them a couple of years and I'm confident that they'll all be part of the program.
It's so wonderful to see the government's starting to really integrate into this local level and really understanding how valuable these marine resources are. I know I had been talking to Michelle Westmoreland, and she had mentioned that there's an NBC article that was saying how valuable the coral reefs are, and if we don't take care of them, it's going to affect economies. The economies are going to collapse, and they specifically mentioned the Caribbean. But you're kind of ahead of the game in that you're already talking to these emerging economies in Southeast Asia. You're already locking into them at a national level and now at a local level. So they're starting to understand the importance of coral reefs that generate all this business. But then you're also allowing them to get all these volunteers to work and to be part of the solution. It's just a beautiful system.
It really is. It's a true public-private partnership, and there's not many of them globally that are functional. And I'm pleased to say that Greenfins is really fully functional in the areas that it's become established. And we're really, really proud of some of the outputs that it's delivering on a local level.
And you were mentioning the innovations that some of your members have come up with. Can you mention a couple of innovations that really strike you as being awesome, like wow?
Well, some of the dive guides that we've worked with, I learned afterwards that they went away and produced, actually I'll come back to these icons again, but they produced these on little tiny slides or slates, and they took them diving with them and put them in their pocket with their BCPs. And so when they're actually diving, if a customer is doing something that might be deemed a little bit of a risk to the environment, they can pull out their icons and say to them, hey, it's not my fault, it's Greenfins. The Greenfins members will lose our membership, sort of thing, but don't do that. So it's actually a way of communicating better underwater as well, and to bring Greenfins into it, to kind of pass the buck in a way. But there's also loads of other fantastic different ways that the diving industry are coming over local issues, like a simple one like not using masking tape and instead of using permanent caps on the tanks to show that they're full. Because often when you're out in a dive boat and you take that masking tape off, it's windy and you lose it. So instead, just using the caps that can be flipped on and off. Or coming up with really clever ways to try and encourage people to put maybe their cigarette butts into an ashtray instead of letting them flick overboard. Putting fun and funky ashtrays around the dive boat to draw their attention to them and to encourage them to put the butts into the ashtrays instead of overboard. There are 100 different ways that I could try and think. We had another dive centre that helped us to come up with a locally made or homemade, environmentally friendly cleaning product made out of bicarbonate of soda, vinegar, and a local lemon or kind of orange, and then not needing to use the chemical cleaning products anymore. It can be used in lots of different ways. So actually not using the chemical cleaning products. And they came to us after a while and said, hey, we've saved money because the chemical cleaning products were really expensive. And now look, we're only spending this much on cleaning.
That's great. And it's all biodegradable and it doesn't trash the reef. It's exactly. Wonderful. It's wonderful. Well, I'd love to get that list of 100. We need to get you everywhere. That's what we need to do, because this is really incredible. If let's say somebody in another part of the world, somebody in the Bahamas or wherever, somebody in Cayman or Belize or whatever, wanted to see the kind of assessment that you go through to see just how they measured up, could they do that?
Well, we've actually just received some funding from the United Nations Environment Programme through a coral reef partnership that's a global programme that they've launched, and Greenfins is a major component of that. And part of that project will be to develop some more useful tools. And so these tools will be toolkits, I suppose, for at the dive centre level and also at the local level and the national level. So these will hopefully guide people through how to implement Greenfins within the dive centre, and also how local governments can use them and national governments. So from a dive centre's point of view, I'm really hoping that this is going to compile all of these tips and tricks that I was just talking about into one central location and align it with the Greenfins Code of Conduct. So a dive centre can actually look through it. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be videos. It's not going to be a list of criteria and red lists and black lists or anything. It's going to be something that can really engage people, and it's going to have all of our materials. All of our materials are free for download anyway. And we're happy to share all of our presentations with everyone. You don't have to be a Greenfins member to promote environmentally responsible diving. We want people to do it no matter what. The only thing that we can't do is we can't get to every dive centre and actually measure how well they're doing it to be able to promote them as Greenfins member. But there's nothing stopping people from getting started, and hopefully this toolkit, which will be released later this year, will give people a lot more direction on how they can go about doing that.
I love it. No excuses. No excuses. And the benefits are already proving themselves. When you get 75% to 100% participation rate, no matter where you go, it sounds like people get this. That once they embrace it, it's a no-brainer. It's a complete no-brainer. I want to find out what happens with that toolkit. So I hope. Well, we will definitely stay in touch. We will definitely keep this moving forward. This is so exciting to see this kind of impact that the dive industry is having on governments. Who knew, right? Who knew? We're just a little dive industry, and now policy is actually being made, and local governments even are getting plugged in. I think a lot of the problems we have in the dive industry is because we're disconnected, and you're connecting the dots.
We really are. I mean, we just heard the other day. I was hearing about some of the Greenfins assessors who were the diving industry came to Greenfins, the local Greenfins team, to say that their local business was putting a floating restaurant just out on their house reef, which is actually a really important area for some of the marine life that they like to show. That there's a lot of flamboyant cuttlefish there. There's a lot of ghost pipefish, so for macro life. And they were going to put this floating restaurant out there. And so they came to Greenfins, and then the local team went to the local government, the head of the local government, and said to him, is there anything we can do about this? And he said, well, let's just see what it's all about. Let's call a meeting. So the local government head didn't actually go to the meeting, but the meeting was recorded on a cell phone. And then the cell phone was taken back to the local government head. And he didn't even listen to the whole meeting. He just heard how many different voices from the diving industry were at the meeting and said, this is too much of a headache. Don't let them do it. Stop it. No, we won't have the floating restaurant. So it's just, it shows that uniting that many voices on a local and a national and an international level can have a huge impact.
Yeah, this is so wonderful. The days of competition are pretty much done, and we're still operating from that model, and we can see that when we come together, it's quite incredible what we can accomplish. And Greenfins, that's what you are doing, and the proof is there. It is happening. I'm so excited that we can download all your information, well, most of your information off your website, and so everybody go to greenfins.net, right?
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. You plugged it for me.
and just see all the amazing things that you're doing. It's only helping businesses. So thank you for being out there, being on the leading edge of this, and showing that this is possible, and not only possible, it's happening in another side of the world, and it's working. It's great.
And I just want to add one more thing, that we are, like I said to Martina, it's not about competition, it's about collaboration. We're open to anyone and everyone. I might not have reached out to everyone who's working in the same sector just because I'm too busy getting things going here. But we're always open to share, exchange information. The Greenfins approach is a proven, replicable approach. It's late at night. And so use it. It's taken 10 years in the making. Let's use something. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's use something that works and is proven.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chloe. You have no idea how much I appreciate your time. And now a whole lot more people are going to know what Greenfins is all about. And you're going to get more people to your website for sure.
Great. Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for tuning in, those of you who have.
You take care, Chloe. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye. you.